starting from, my traditional roots of jazz and bebop and getting to work with my mentors Lee Konitz and Phil Woods, all the way to my contemporaries, including a really wild baritone saxophonist named Leo Pellegrino. He goes by Leo P. And his band is called Too Many Zoos, and they literally tour all around the world. They were recently on a Google Pixel commercial. You might have seen them on TV. It played during the Super Bowl. He has pink hair, and he in the past he's danced and played with Beyonce on the Country Music Awards. So he is quite a sight because he's dancing with this giant baritone, and he's quite the fashion guy. So we did a collaboration on my recent album where we brought him into the studio with my band, and we had a live audience, and we did a whole choreographed number where we were dancing, we were playing. We did a pop-up. I had this series called Pop-Ups where the two of us were in Times Square. I live in New York. We're in Times Square, and we walked the streets playing and dancing in a red light. And then, by the time we got over to the other side, there was a huge crowd of people, and we went at it. And there was a random guy who was dressed in a Pikachu costume, and you can see it on YouTube. It's such a hoot, and it's completely improvised at the moment.
Yeah. It is just on the floor.
Well, besides the melody and the dancing, but the improv's just static.
And so now you're adding choreographer to your list of disciplines, you might say, right?
Yeah, so actually my roots, before I got into saxophone, before I got into jazz, were Broadway. And so I grew up acting. My parents took me to see great Broadway productions since I was 2 years old. I saw The Lion King, I saw Thoroughly Modern Millie twice. I begged them, I knew the whole soundtrack. And I started dancing, I started doing ballet when I was 6 years old. And I was told from my parents that ever since I could talk, I was making up skits, singing songs, and dancing. I didn't really need toys. They just leave me in the room with a mirror and a chair, and I'd come out with a full skit and song and dance. So, and then actually, I transitioned from ballet into tap. And my very first concert when I was 12 years old, I had a family friend say to me, "I bet you couldn't play saxophone and tap dance at the same time." And I was like, ooh. And so then I worked at it, and I played Charlie Parker's My Little Suede Shoes, and I tapped and I played, and then I put the saxophone down, and I traded tapping with the drummer. And then I kind of got so deep into music that acting and dancing became less of a thing, and now I'm really trying to get back into it, and it's been bringing so much more. I don't know, I think at the end of the day, whether it's music, dance, anything in the arts, it's all about expression, right? We're on stage, and I'm trying to express to all of you, and I want you to be part of the story. And so, in any way that comes across, that's something that I strive to make stronger in a show.
I think that's a great thought and a great ethic to take on this stage. I was talking to some people where we've seen great concerts. Concerts can be wonderful concerts musically. Every note is hit perfectly. But something doesn't happen. And I deduce that you have to feel the joy from the person on stage.
Yeah.
And if you really earnestly have that joy, you can touch people with the joy along with the great music too.
Absolutely.
And you certainly have that.
Thank you. And it's very much when you go out to eat, it's not always, it might hit your taste, that's great, but it's it's the waiter, it's the smell, it's what memories does it bring back. I mean, there's a whole thing, and there's such a variety of, I've been to so many live shows where I felt so many different emotions when I walked out of the door. I remember when I saw Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, the original cast, it was wow, virtuosity and just craft to the max. And at the end, I think Victor Wooten was playing his bass solo, and then he threw his bass and caught it. I mean, there were just so many things that and everyone did. We all walked out and we were dizzy, but that was an incredible effect. And then there's another times that I just started crying when I was watching Rosa Passos sing, and I was just a puddle of tears. So.
Isn't it amazing that music does that to us, isn't it?
Well, music is this high vibration, and it's it is pretty incredible that we can just get feelings across to each other.
Right. Amazing.
I mean, a lot of times I say, and I talk about this with my other musician friends, it's a lot easier for me to communicate through music than through words. There's some days, I don't know if you guys feel like this, that I'm just like, oh, words are so hard. I'd much rather just play all my emotions to the person that I'm arguing with, or that I'm happy. It'd just be a lot easier for me.
Yeah. So just get back to the technicalities of it. So you grew up sort of on Broadway. That was kind of interesting to me. I wasn't aware of that. So you're coming back to your Broadway heart, so to speak, because you're doing more performance, and I always thought of you as a straight musician, as a straight, sax player.
Yeah.
But that happened a little later.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And how did that, tell me when, well, it looked like the music was in you all along, but when did you hear jazz and say, oh, that's what I want to do?
Well, I think actually my parents played such a wide variety of music when I was growing up that jazz was just part of the playlist. I mean, they played a ton of Stan Getz and Joe Beam, Girl from Ipanema. It's like every Sunday when we're having brunch, turn on some great Brazilian music. And then the sound of my childhood was Eric Jackson on WGBH every night at 8 o'clock, just like, So it was kind of just always in my psyche, and I think the first time I saw a jazz concert, one of the first people I saw was Clark Terry.
Oh yeah? Where'd you see him?
At Sculler's Jazz Club in Boston. And I remember thinking, and he was a lot older and having some physical issues, but the joy that came across, and it just struck me as this incredible moment of like, wow, he's up there, physically not able to do everything he used to be able to do on his instrument, but his joy and the way, it was so powerful. And I think throughout all that, early childhood listening, and then the first time I put my hands on a saxophone, which is when I was 10, that's when it really bit me, because there was something that just connected so quickly with me and the instrument.
And with the saxophone, not trumpet or piano or anything else, it was the saxophone.
It was definitely the sax. I played clarinet in 4th grade in public school, and I did not have that at all. It was quite the opposite, actually. Squeaking, frustrated, but I always had this idea in my head that I would play saxophone, and I asked my parents if I could start early because I couldn't start in public school until 5th grade, and I really wanted to start when I was in 4th grade instead of clarinet. I was like, I don't want the clarinet. And then I remember the first time I pulled out my Yamaha student horn, and I had opened it up every day and looked at it before my lesson, and I looked at it like for 2 weeks straight, never putting it together, and then went to my lesson, put on a reed, blew into it, and just got this nice sound right away, and it was like, it felt right to me, it sounded right, it felt right, and then I just became obsessed.
Right. Well, that's how happens with a lot of guys. And then a lot of people, because then that's all you want to do is practice. You want to just eat up hours in the practice room.
Yeah.
So you took private lessons up through and if my memory serves, you went to Berkeley.
I went to
End of your
Berkeley.
teens, or?
Yeah, when I was 16.
Yeah.
So I was taking private lessons. I was going to the Brookline Music School because I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts. I went to the New England Conservatory Prep School. So I've been incredibly blessed with the most incredible teachers and conservatories. And I actually made my first recording at 12 years old, and I had my first public concert as a band leader. And I remember I thought maybe only like 30 friends and family were going to come. We did it at St. Paul's Church in Brookline. And that morning there was a giant article that came out in the Brookline Tab newspaper. And that night it was like 250 people, and it was sold out, and I was like, oh my gosh! And then they called my name, and I almost didn't go on stage because I was so nervous. I just never had led a band or done any of that. But I do remember there was a moment that in the middle of the show, I felt this incredible feeling, this like light bulb of being like, wow, if I could do this for the rest of my life and like have this connection with everyone, boy, this is so joyous, and I feel like I'm on a cloud. And the next year, I got invited to play in Tromsø, Norway for my first international concert. That was my first time out of the country, and they brought my whole band and my family, and I was in 8th grade at the time. So we went to Tromsø, and then next day came back to, a few days later, I came back to school, and my friends were like, how's Norway? I was like, it's cool, we went dog sledding, awesome. Yeah, and then things started to organically snowball into Berkeley at 16.
Right.
Yeah, and then after that, I did a little bit of teaching for them, and then decided it was time to leave Boston, so I journeyed to the West Coast and went to Los Angeles. And I had a lot of wonderful opportunities there, and did a lot more on the pop side of things, doing songwriting, and then some television and writing for TVs and movies. I was also featured in that Amazon TV show Bosch, which was filmed out in Hollywood. And then The Late Show with Stephen Colbert brought me back to the East Coast.
You're right, I've seen you on Late Night with Stephen Colbert, John Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
We would have loved to have had John Baptiste here before we became John Baptiste.
Yeah. And that's when I knew John. I mean, we've been friends for years. He recorded on one of my albums, Trying to Figure It Out. And we'll do a song tonight that he played on. And, I remember the first time I saw his set years ago, because I know his saxophonist from when I was 14. We went to jazz camp together. That's how we all know each other. And I just remember the first time I saw them, I was so overwhelmed with, I just became a giant fan. I felt so good. I was like singing, I was dancing along. And I remember saying to John, I'll be in the front row of your performances, wherever you guys play. Whether I play or not, I'll be there. And really, like every show, we'd play, we'd hang, and then he'd have me as a special guest at the Blue Note. We played the Newport Jazz Fest together, and then, years later, he got that gig with Stephen Colbert, which was, our whole community was so psyched, and then to get that call from him, because I worked with him, the band, on the show for like 6 months, which was only supposed to be 2 weeks, so turned out to be just the greatest time. I just saw him at Newport because my band played Saturday and he played after. And it's
nice catching up, seeing people on the road.
Yeah.
Good people doing good with their
Exactly.
lives.
Same cats, just beautiful people.
So I'm thinking, I'm imagining you're 17, you're 18, you're out there playing and stuff. What about there's that traditional story of a young jazz artist starting up, gigging here, gigging there, clubs and stuff like that. After Toronto and all of that, was there a period with you where you were just getting gigs, or how did that?
Yeah,
and then there was Phil Woods was the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate in my career to have some of the most incredible mentors that it's just like pinch me, right? People I've grown up listening to. The first time I got to share the stage with the late great Dave Brubeck. I mean, Paul Desmond was one of my first saxophone heroes. So I literally just went to bed listening to like Time Out and these great records. First time I got to meet and play with Wynton Marsalis, I was 16. I met him at Roth's Steakhouse in New York City. Super random series of events. Was playing with a piano trio there. Second set, there's like 10 people in the audience, and who walks in? Wynton walks in, jams with us for the whole second set, and then we get a call a week later saying, would Grace be a guest with Wynton and his orchestra at Rose Hall at Lincoln Center for 3 nights? Later, it was, would Grace be a special guest for Obama's inauguration? Wynton's curating a whole thing. So I've actually gotten most of my training on stage. Frank Morgan's been another one of my saxophone heroes and mentors. And honestly, it is the greatest and most intimidating spot to like learn a craft, because there's been plenty of nights, that it's like, ooh, can I do that over? But it's also it's been such an incredible learning experience.
So Phil Woods comes into your life, Lee Conantz comes into your life. How did that happen? Was it?
They were both kind of very organic things that happen.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of Lee Conantz and Lenny Tristano's music ever since I started the sax, and same with Phil Woods. My parents met Lee Conantz at a jazz club in New York back when I was off in Maine at a band camp, and I remember getting a letter from them saying, we met one of your idols, Lee Conan's. We went to the Jazz Standard, and then we talked to him afterwards. And I'm like, and then we asked him if he teaches lessons. And I'm like, what? And then my dad, was trying him, and Lee was saying, no, I don't teach lessons. But then he started mentioning, oh, Grace is studying with Jerry Bergonzi, and then Lee started going, well, here's my number, and next time she's in town, I'd like to meet her. And so I remember the first time we went to his apartment, and I was 13, and I was so nervous. I was like about to pee in my pants as we're in the elevator. And met him, and we had this lesson. And then afterwards, he said, I'd like to see you every time you're in New York, and just continue having these conversations. He never wanted to call them lessons. He called them conferences. And then invited me to perform with him at one of his gigs. And it's very surreal for me, because, these are people that I've grown up listening to, transcribing, crafting my sound. And Phil Woods I met in Stanford, California, and there's a jazz camp called the Stanford Jazz Residency, and he was one of the faculty members. And as fate would have it, my ensemble was right before the one he taught. So he used to come early, and he'd listen to us, and he'd see me and say some really encouraging words. And later we got an opportunity to perform together, and he brought me on stage in one of his gigs. And I was 14 years old, and after my solo, he took off his legendary leather cap, and he put it on my head. It's actually on YouTube. You can see it. My dad filmed it, and Phil's seen it too. And after his solo, I tried to give the hat back to him, and he said, no, you keep that. That looks great on you. And that was his leather cap that he'd worn on so many of his record covers. Like, it's really well worn. And then he later got a brand new shiny one. And we went on to make a recording together. He actually toured with my band for like a whole month, all throughout Europe. We played the Hollywood Bowl for the Playboy Jazz Festival. We played Newport together. We played Montreux. We did the Oslo Jazz Fest. And I'm forever incredibly grateful for these incredible opportunities. I guess we don't expect. I'm just incredibly grateful.
It's what a great way to learn, right?
Yeah.
That's really the sort of passing the torch in jazz that's existed since jazz was came into being. So you're growing up and you're a jazz artist. Do you ever get kidded about that as being a jazz person at a young age?
Kidded about it?
Well, why do you listen to that music? Why don't you listen to more popular music, the music, because I did.
Yeah.
But did the other people your age kind of wonder why you're listening to that funny, difficult to understand music?
Well, when I was in, I think it was 4th grade, I actually had an all-girls band called Blue Infinity, and we all played horns, and we all thought it was really cool to play these instruments, and then we got our whole grade into it. We used to have CD release concerts in the basement, and we were like, we had t-shirts and the whole thing. We were very popular. We played the Super Mario Brothers theme song. My uncle that's still his favorite. He's like, you have that CD? It was like 10 CDs later. He's like, I really like that one from the Super Mario Brothers theme song. But I think personally, I love so much music. I mean, my playlist ranges from Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, to Skrillex and Zed and John Mayer. I mean, everything from electronic music to jazz to pop. And I think our set very much embodies that. I think the greatest thing about jazz is celebrating improvisation and spontaneity and making things up in the moment. And to me, as long as, I think jazz means so many different things, but at the end of the day, if you have that element of improvisation, and Phil Woods, we talked about this a lot, he said, man, jazz fits into everything, Latin music, world music, whatever, that's what makes the artistry of a jazz musician so special. It's gonna be different every time. It's, we're celebrating the moment, we're celebrating the energy, the feelings of the moment. So, I don't think I really got any questions.
Really? Well, there's sort of lines are being blurred in jazz.
Definitely.
I mean, these days.
Yeah.
And what's jazz and what isn't jazz? And jazz tends to grab out to everything around it anyway. As Dexter Gordon said, jazz is like an octopus. It just reaches up what's out there. Let's bring some of this in, let's bring some of that in. As long as it contains, as you say, that element of improvisation, why not pull it all in?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of young people, like my contemporaries, that, you know, if you listen to Kendrick Lamar or Chance the Rapper, like there's a lot of actually jazz musicians on their records, cats that I know from LA, and there's some tracks that are straight up like just have tons of jazz elements. Or if you listen to Amy Winehouse or a lot of these popular pop artists that came out of the UK, you just hear the subtleties, and there's so much jazz in that. It's just, it wasn't marketed or to, you know, younger people, actually it went to everyone, but you know, the stigma that might come from younger people thinking about jazz being an older music isn't there in those artists' case, because they literally don't know that that's what it's called, except that they're listening to it. So I think that's part of that's been something I really, as you know, a millennial in jazz, been trying to make it a really fun thing for my other peers to realize that jazz can be this great fun thing for everybody, and you don't have to be like well educated to listen to it or have to know about, like, be a wine connoisseur or anything. If it hits you, it hits you, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just kind of like all art forms.
Yeah, well, that's the wonderful thing. Thank you so much for continuing jazz and taking it into the next millennium, because there's always that concern on the part of people who love jazz that somehow it's being dissipated, or some have a very low percentage on the market of music that's sold worldwide. But you're doing a wonderful job of, as you say, people don't know they're listening to jazz. They're just enjoying the music,
Right.
which is what they should do anyway.
Absolutely.
You know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you about you had your first album, and which was Dreaming.
Yes, when I was
Dreaming.
12.
12 years old. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Wow. And now, do you look back on that now and see yourself differently now than you, in terms of that first album?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm very proud of that first album, and we actually, we have only a few of those first CDs left, so some people who know my music really well literally have the super fan set of every disc I made, which is now up to 11, because I actually started at 12, and then I made the next disc at 13 and 14. And I look at a lot of those early recordings as documentations of my progress. You know, I don't think that you're ever gonna be ready to make an album, and I've been reminded about this with great producers I've worked with. It's just a frozen moment in time, and so I look back at that first recording being very proud of it. Obviously, a lot has changed. I sound like a 12-year-old when I'm singing, and I'm writing these love songs about, I don't know, I think I was imagining all of it. But I'm very proud of it, and I have these memories, I have really distinct memories of when I was in the studio making that. That was the first time when I was 12 years old that I got to go into a recording studio and be in front of a mic and have these headphones on. And I'm really grateful for all the years of being in the studio, because that's a very different feeling than being on stage. It's a different craft. It's a different, it's just different all around. And to get all the experience of all these years in becoming a recording artist is all due to literally growing up in the recording. And then I've been equally as lucky to be able to do that on stage as well. So I actually look at recording and live performance as two very different art forms.
Right. Yeah, I will say on that first album, your rendition of Smile, even though you're very young, is so, there's a sweetness, but a heartbreaking sweetness to that voice.
Thank you.
And you've done Smile, I think you can own that song. You do such a beautiful job.
I love that song, thank you. That's so sweet. I recorded that on a recent album, trying to figure it out, and I've been singing it all these years, and it's literally changed so much all of these years, and it continues to be one song that, you know, people say really digs into their hearts, and I never get tired of it. It's a beautiful one.
It shows, you can tell. Tell us about, I forgot the name of her new LP. It's blanking. Brooklyn, something Brooklyn.
Oh, Go Time Brooklyn.
Go Time Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Tell us about what your new CD.
Yeah, so we went into the studio last February in Brooklyn, New York at Systems 2, and I realized that my favorite thing in the whole world is, well, I realized this a while ago, but performing is my all-time favorite thing. And as much as I've always loved recording over the years, I've never really been able to capture the energy of what I feel myself and my band can bring live. And so I decided on this new album that it would be a video album. And we went into the studio, we had a live audience. It was a small group. Everyone was wearing wireless headphones, so we literally had the chairs set up inside, and then we had the band in a circle, and then we had special guests. Leo P was one, Elliot Skinner was a vocalist with us, and everyone was wearing wireless headphones. I had a couple dancers with me, so we were kind of merging performance art with music, and at the end of the performance, it turned into a spontaneous dance party. You have to go see it because I really can't explain it. The band just started jamming. We hadn't rehearsed that part, and then all of a sudden, like, everyone was up, and it was the most glorious thing ever. So people can search Go Time Brooklyn, and as those clips have been coming out on YouTube, they've also now made its way onto the album, and I've been so blessed to have a wonderful group of supporters through this platform, Pledge Music, which is basically like a music crowdfunding Kickstarter platform. And thanks to all those fans, and Pledge Music is still running. The really cool thing about it is there's a lot of exclusive, experiential store items. So either, you know, we go out to dinner, or we film a pop-up together, or or you'll be the first to get music. Anyways, thanks to that group, I was literally able to put out the album. And tonight we also have Go Time Brooklyn 2, which is from the same session, but it's more of the electronic jazz songs. So we're gonna be playing a lot of them tonight, and Go Time Brooklyn 2 is actually not out yet. It's technically only out for pre-order, so I'm really excited that we have it.
Great, wonderful. Well, listen, can we have time for some questions from the audience? Any questions for Grace? And we have...
None.
Right here. I have a question. I was wondering, we have started a jazz workshop here at Rockport.
Oh, wonderful.
And we've been doing it for about 5 years now. We're up to 120 young students, 10 to 18, all disciplines, all instruments, all levels.
Fantastic.
And if you were speaking to someone, a young person, what kind of advice might you give them?
I think in general, my parents have always said to me and my sister, we're in very different fields. She's in the tech world, but they've always said, find something you love to do so that it never feels like you work a day in your life. Never feels like you go to work. And I feel so lucky that going to work is getting to be with all of you and to be on stage and to travel the world. And I would say that to any youngster, to follow their passion. And I think music is one that traditionally, I've heard a lot of stories of some parents telling their kids to do it on the side, or it's not really, you could go be a doctor and then do music on the side. And I do say that if you want to go study, to be a doctor, and you really have a love and a passion for that, and you have a passion for music, do that. You could still do music with it. But if music is literally the thing you live, eat, breathe, and some of these kids couldn't imagine a day without it, then to go chase that passion and that dream is so powerful. And I've been lucky to be in such a supportive family and have the opportunities to get to do that with my life, because I really couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That answers one of the questions I had was, have you ever, and I think you've answered it, have you ever thought of doing something else? Architect, airplane pilot? I don't think so.
No, I've always said,
This seems to be it.
Yeah, I thought that even if I did something else, it would always be in the creative field, because I think my essence from when I was really young was always just making things up. And I've just always thought out of the box. Sometimes I do things that they just don't really make sense.
A little strange.
A little strange. But I don't know, they make sense in my head. And I think, of course, right? And I think that's the same thing of when when you're writing a song, like I'm such a dreamer, and there's times that I'm talking to my family or I'm talking to people, and if there's music playing, or I just space out. And it's not because I'm not listening to what you're saying, but it's literally like a song might hit me, or I'm walking down the street. I love silence because I just hear music in my head all the time. So people are like, my boyfriend's like, why aren't you listening to more music around the house? I'm like, because I'm hearing it all the time. So I think I was definitely born to be in the arts.
Right. Do we have a question over here? Yes.
You were talking about Johnny P.
Leo P.
Oh, Leo P.
Yes.
You said he was with a group?
He's with a group called Too Many Zoos.
Awesome. Warriors song is awesome.
That's the one. That's
Oh
the
my
Google
God,
song.
that song is great.
Where do you know it from?
I was at a jazz club up in New Hampshire, Riverwalk Cafe, and they were playing it in the background, and I immediately got up off my chair and said to the person who was playing it, I need that song.
That's amazing.
It's in, you have to, everybody,
It is
go
a
buy
great
that song.
It is so good.
It's outrageous, it's very, very fun.
I think a lot of
Turn
new
it up.
people have found it because that was the one in the Google commercial.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a great one.
That's where I hear it from.
And they were in it too. Yes.
You're in that?
No, I'm not in it, but the
Oh.
band's actually in it, which is pretty cool of Google
Got it.
to like feature the band.
And
Warriors.
if you go to Grace's website, you'll see
You'll see
her
our
and
collaboration.
Leo P.
Yes.
It's a great, very infectious.
Oh, good.
Great,
Yeah.
loved it. Question over here, yes.
Yeah,
Gary.
Grace, can you tell a little bit about the audience participation? The thing that goes on between you and the audience, it is so escalating in a great way, and I'm thinking the recent story about Newport Jazz with the girl saxophone
Yes.
players.
So everybody, this is Gary, and he's become a great friend of mine. We met at a performance of mine like 5 years ago. 6 years, and it was an instant friendship, and I think Gary knows my set maybe better than me. I mean, you've been to just about a lot of performances, and we've had some very many soulful talks about music. So we recently performed at the Rockport Jazz Festival, which was a thrill, and at the end of my set, we were in the quad stage, tented area. It just started torrential rain, it was pouring. But it was such an exciting energy, and for the Rockport Jazz Festival, we created these bright pink blow-up saxophones, these small guys, and they had little stickers that said Rockport Jazz. So during one of the songs, which we will play tonight, my mom and Gary went out in the crowd, and they literally had trash bags filled with these saxophones, which in itself was just the most amazing sight. I had me smiling ear to ear. Then they just started passing out saxophones during the song, and at one point I felt very moved to just go out in the crowd. So I went out, and all these young girls ran up to me with bright pink blow-up saxophones, and they started copying my moves, and it was, I tell you guys, I was in heaven, really, because I'm in the middle of the circle, more and more people are running in with blow-up saxophones. It's like better than any dream I've ever had. And it's just like, the circle's getting bigger and bigger, and everybody's just wailing, like, on their saxophones, and then we're all just dancing. And I had this moment that I was flooded with so much happiness, so much joy. Looking around, it was so goofy. It was so fantastic, and that's the feeling. Like, I think that level of vibration and joyfulness is something that a lot of us can't channel at a given moment. When we're walking down the street, it's hard to get there. But wow, in that moment, we were there, and it was glorious. And thank you, Gary, for passing out those saxophones. I mean, that was so fantastic.
I don't think architects or airline pilots feel that.
No, maybe they must feel it in their own way.
Maybe in their own
I'm lucky as a performer to actually get to experience it with you. Maybe the pilot feels that when they land the plane, and everybody's giving a round of applause. Yeah.
Any questions over here?
All right, there.
Grace, I've seen you with so many really good musicians in your quartet or quintet. Do you ever do anything with Jason anymore, Jason Palmer?
Jason Palmer. And Arthur is another great friend who I think ever since we've known each other for many years. He's come to so many shows and became a great friend. I haven't seen Jason in a while. I've gone through many different band configurations, and at one point, definitely when we were here at Rockport in the past, we had a wonderful trumpet player who would make up the quintet. Since then, the music's transitioned into being more keyboard synth heavy and just kind of having one horn, unless we're having special guests like Leo and stuff. But Jason is literally one of my favorite people on the planet. Every time we do a production, last September we did something at the Rockport Performance Center for my good friend Fred Taylor. We did a giant all-star concert, and Jason was there for that. It's like we pick up right where we ended, and we have this incredible connection through music that when we played together, we used to sometimes like hit the same notes at the same moments, and people would come up after being like, was that written out? How do you do that? And we're just like, no, it wasn't written, and we just feel it. It happens. We have a really deep connection, and every time we're back together, it goes right back to that.
Yes, right
I
here.
was curious, because another saxophonist that loves silence is Stan Getz. Have you played with him at all?
Oh my gosh, I wish.
I love silence too.
Yeah, Stan Getz is the reason why I play saxophone.
Okay.
I think I would
okay,
just
okay.
melt if that had ever happened. But I have played with him when I put my headphones on and I jam. And that's what I tell my students to do. I'm like, you can jam with whoever you want. Just put the record on and play. They don't hear you, but
And, well, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I'm gonna let you rest now.
thank you. See you guys down there.